Hello everyone, my name is Christian, welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are doing a review discussion on Harrow the Ninth, Book 2 of the Locked Tomb trilogy. Book 3 is nowhere in sight, so I went ahead and just read it. And we have a wonderful guest with us today, first time appearing on the channel, Ilana from Unabridged Adventures, right?
Yeah, and hi, thanks for having me on the channel.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really happy that we finally got you on the channel. For months we've been like, let's do Harrow the Ninth, let's do Harrow the Ninth. And I was waiting for that release date announcement, and then it got pushed to 2022. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna forget everything if I don't start now. So this month, I finally read it, and it was as crazy as everyone said it was. We can do a
Yeah,
non-spoiler
it
initial
definitely is.
reactions first if you want, so people can get non-spoiler stuff. But yeah, this book is
Oh
as
yeah, sure.
awesome as people say it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a very different type of book than I think the first one. Like it immediately has a different tone, but I think it plays really well whenever you have that kind of jarring difference. Just be like, oh, okay, so this is like something new, and I think it just kind of helps keep the series interesting throughout like the middle book, so you don't have that middle book syndrome where it's just like the same thing. So I really enjoyed how like the change in perspective and everything played.
Yeah, this is the first book I think I've ever read that did second person. Because, like, in high school, when you're in English class and language arts and whatever they call it, they talk about second person, but no one ever has an example. They just talk about it and they're like, yeah, don't do this. It's
Yeah,
really
I think
hard to do right. And this book nailed it.
yeah, I think I read one book in second person perspective whenever I was younger and just hated the way that it was written. And I would have been a lot like more uncomfortable with this if I hadn't read part of the Broken Earth trilogy, because that's all like written in second person. And that was done so well that I went into this and I'm like, okay, it can be done well. No need to panic.
Yeah, because that was always a worry I had. Because I heard about the weirdness of this book. And it's written like, you went down the hallway and saw a thing. You thought to yourself, and I'm like, this is so weird. And like, again, there's that 85% point where 85% completion where everything gets explained. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh. And like, that was awesome. It's one of my favorite reveals because everyone talks about that all the time. And I was trying to predict it. I kept sending you texts. I was like, I think it's this. I think it's this. It was like none of it was
Yeah.
right. It was something totally out of left
Oh
field.
gosh. And it was so hard to not say anything because I'm like, oh, these are very interesting ideas, but like once you understand, like I can't wait to actually have that discussion. But yeah, it was so hard not to say anything.
I
Yeah, it was kind of
yeah.
like mhm.
I was just gonna say I was confused for like 80% of this book. I didn't know what was going because I knew the plot points, but the way that it was structured, I was like, what? I thought it was time traveling happening because we jump back and forth because it says. Uh, I guess we can get in spoilers. We've said some stuff,
It's a
but
bit hard not to with this book.
yeah, because before I started this book, I like to go to the final page and look at how many pages are on the book. I don't read it. I just
Oh,
kind of look
okay.
at the
I
numbers.
thought you were gonna say you go to the final page and read,
Oh no,
and I was gonna be like, okay, that's it. We have to end our friendship here. Like,
I don't do that. But I remember because the title was like 8 months after the death of the emperor, and I was like, oh no, I got spoiled. But I opened the book to page
mhm.
one, and it said 6 months before, and I was like, oh, I'm not spoiled anymore. Like you're supposed to know this. Like
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you messaged me about that like a month or two before you started reading, and I'm like, that is not a spoiler, but I also don't know how to explain that. So you'll figure it out.
I was really excited because I was
But
like, now I officially don't know anything about this book. Because I thought that was a big reveal. Because at the end of book one, Gideon dies, and I did not expect that at
yeah.
all.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my
yeah.
gosh. But there's a lot more stuff happening now that I know. The end of this book, but like I didn't expect that, and I guess we can go into that whole ending of this book because everything else is just confusing. and I need a whole reread to even
Oh,
understand.
okay. You definitely need a whole reread because you miss so much stuff in book one.
I I
Like
thought Harrow was like
seriously.
30 something years old and like the teacher of Gideon. And I was like, this is not a relationship I'm with. And then you were like, no, she's
Yeah,
younger. And I was like, what?
you were texting me about that, and I was literally on my way to like physical therapy. So I'm stopping at stoplights, being like, I need to talk about this, but also I don't want to like get into a crash. So like the entire drive, I was just being like, what? So like, I really want to hear your opinions whenever you reread because I feel like that will change a lot of the tone of the book and everything. But yeah, the best way I can describe the reveal at the end of this book is like I was watching on like YouTube where someone set up dominoes or bricks that worked like dominoes, and so you watch them go down and collapse, and then when the last one falls, they all like go backwards and lay flat. And so you have this like domino effect and the reverse domino effect. And so it's like you're watching all this stuff happening as you're going through the book, but you're not quite sure what happens. And then as soon as you get that reveal, it's like everything makes sense. And just, it was so satisfying to read.
It
I was
was.
like, oh my God, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because this book, like, I like this series a lot because instead of being like Brandon Sanderson or whoever, it's like part one, part two. It says act one. It's like a play. And I really like that because it does
Mm-hmm.
feel like a play reading these books. And right when part four ends, it's that final chapter in part four. It explains everything, and you're like, now I have to go read the rest of the book. There's 130 pages left. Because that's what I did last night. As I hit that final chapter, I was like, oh, okay. And then I read it all, and I did not see that Harrow somehow brought Gideon's soul into hers and they shared the same body. It was really bizarre. And that's why it's written as you, because Harrow has no control the whole book. Gideon is like
Mm-hmm.
puppeteering Harrow the whole time.
Well,
Is what I
Harrow is
understand it.
Gideon is like along for the ride, but she doesn't have any control over her actions. So it is Harrow that is like doing everything throughout because yeah, there's like a slight disconnect between them, which you can see whenever Gideon like takes over Harrow's body. But yeah, at least that's what I got from it. But I know there's quite a few different interpretations because of just how differently written this is. And I do just want to say that like you get that like 85 mark and like everything makes sense. And then you get to the epilogue and whenever you're like, okay, I finally understand everything, you get this weird epilogue that makes you start questioning everything again. And so just I love how she's always keeping us guessing whenever it comes to what's going to happen in the next book.
Yeah, because I read the epilogue and it's basically someone's being trained like on how to be like skilled in various stuff like swordplay and all that because we know and this is because we were predicting last night who is the epilogue POV because it ends like
Mm-hmm.
do you not know who I am? They're like I have no idea and you're like oh no
Yeah.
who is this like what's this mystery and I thought it was Electo because each book Gideon the Ninth was from Gideon's POV. Harrow was I don't even know how to describe, it, but mostly Harrow POV. So in my head, I'm like, the pattern's gotta continue. So
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I haven't read the epilogue in a while, but basically, whenever I finished it, I just went on Google and I was like, the ending of Harrow the Ninth explained because I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. Um, and the explanations that I saw was that like this was Harrow and Gideon trying to like work out like who's in what body and what's happening there, if they can possibly be like separated or something. But I am very interested with your Electro theory. I think I like that one better actually.
yeah, because they talk about the eyes, and the amber one is the Emperor's. I kept getting that reverse, but the because the reveal is that Electo is the body that Harrow fell in love with in the book one.
Yes.
And I was like, what's up with that body? Like, who is that body? Because they talk about it and it's like, oh, it's the goddess, something. I didn't really pay attention, but the Emperor at one point was like, oh yeah, I had to kill her, but actually I didn't kill her. I just told you guys I killed her, because all the super gods are coming in and trying to kill everyone. And
Yeah, because John is a mess and can't do anything right.
good old Jod.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into, I guess, some more specifics, because I know we're talking like around a lot of things. But like, what did you think of just like the general plot lines and stuff? I'm very curious from like a first time reader perspective what you thought.
I really liked it. I liked the whole going back and forth with the river, because I was like, what is this? Like, what is this river deal? And we were getting lots of info, and at one point, Harrow taps into a skull of what's his name?
Right, Palamedes.
Yeah, and he made like a pocket world in it, and she's like, "This is impossible. This is not possible." And that's the like big reveal, is that this entire book has been in the pocket world. At least that's what it seemed like to me. And so all the weird stuff with that was great.
Yeah, and how she had like grabbed people out of the river to like keep in her pocket world, I thought was just fascinating. And like the fact that I can't remember what his name is, but the guy that Ortis was like writing his whole epic poem about was like able to show up and fight, I thought was great. Like that was such a like, okay, hold on, what is happening sort of moment, because it was like up until then everything had been pretty like similar to the first book in that pocket world, because it's just Harrow like reliving that but with Ortis as her cavalier. But then all of a sudden they're like, nope, we're taking a sharp turn, and now there's a chick with a shotgun and the dude from the poem, and they're gonna duke it out. Like, I loved those differences, because it was like, okay, wow, Harrow's got some crazy stuff that she's dealing with on both sides of her worlds.
Yeah, it was funny because I actually did not really like that fight scene. It was just a lot of, she shot at me, and then he went in with an uppercut, and then he punched her in the face. But she's strong, so she shot him in the face. I was like, okay. And it finally ended, thankfully, and we got, like, all the Gideon stuff, which was great. But, like, I don't know, I think Brandon has spoiled me on fights. So.
True. Yeah, I didn't think it was the best written fight scene, but I enjoyed the descriptions, because I remember there's a very specific line where it says that like Harrow sitting there and thoughting about like, if Gideon could see this, she would have sucked her molars out of her mouth, because she would have been so interested in what was happening. And so I really liked it from the perspective of like Harrow watching this and being like, oh, Gideon would have loved this, but I don't know what the heck is happening here. So that's what I enjoyed about that. And also like Ortis being so starstruck by the fact that like his hero is there was just like the highlights of that fight for me was the characters, not the actual like fighting. I was like, I could care less about what's happening there.
It was funny because there was like this is at the point in the story where all the memes really start coming through. Because like right after that fight scene, they have like a exposition dinner, basically. We're all standing around. We get an OG first episode, Gideon, who I don't know what's going on there.
Okay, I gotta take a second to explain that, because there's so much happening with Gideon the First. So basically, like, he is one of the lictors, obviously. Lictors, I'm not sure quite how to pronounce that.
Yeah, I say lictors.
But he was obviously one of the first lictors who only, like, he messed up the transference just like Harrow did. So he actually had his cavalier, like, in him as well. So they're switching out like throughout, I believe. And like taking control of the body. Also, she calls him Ortis the whole time because her brain can't like conceive of the name Gideon, like can't understand that anyone would be named Gideon, or else it would make her think of her Gideon, and then she would like lose her mind because of the whole surgery. So there's that whole confusion where everyone's like, who the heck is Ortis? And she's like, that guy, and then points at Gideon. Which I love how no one tried to like argue with her. They're just like, well, okay, Harrow's crazy, and then moved on. Like that just seems like such a like, okay, we've got bigger things to deal with than her calling the dude by the wrong name. But so he was also sleeping with Gideon's mom, Commander, like Wake Me Up Inside. I can't remember what her actual name was. And did not know about the whole plot to get her pregnant with Jod. So he's chasing her down to return her and her package to Jod whenever she crash lands on the 9th. And so whenever she like yells out the name Gideon, she's trying to tell them that he's chasing her. But they're like, "Aw, that must be what she wants the baby to be named." Hence why Gideon is named Gideon. So it's like this whole weird cycle of things where it's like, no, this has been connected the whole time. And also, like, that's the reason they have the same name. So in order to differentiate that, that's why he's Gideon OG or the first episode.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense then. Okay. Because I was like, what is... Because we have, like, a reveal every paragraph in that entire chapter. And
I know. Like, trying to keep up there is... Mm-hmm. That's why whenever...
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, that's why the reread is going to be great, so...
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm doing a reread right now, and I'm only, like, 2 chapters in, and already everything is different, because I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's happening there. But yeah, that's why when OG Gideon walks into the room with, like, Harrow and Eonth hiding, whenever Jod's doing his whole, like, evil villain monologue, he walks around and takes the sunglasses off of Harrow and puts it on because his eyes have switched, because his Cavalier is the one in charge now. So he has to hide that fact from Jod.
And that's the whole... And that's what... Because it seems like that's how you become a lictor, is being able to share bodies, right? Because they talk about that in the final chapter before the epilogue.
Yeah, Jod was the only one that achieved, like, perfect lictorhood, which is where you, like, almost swap bodies. Like, your souls are intertwined, but you still have your own separate bodies to work from, which is why Alecto has his eyes and he has hers, because they achieved perfect lictorhood. Anastasia, who went on to create the 9th house and, like, do her weird thing, almost achieved it, if I remember correctly, but Jod sabotaged it and then told everyone that she was doing, like, a crazy experiment and never to try it, because he's a terrible person.
Yeah, because the whole story, you're wondering who's going to assassinate him. And I thought it was going to be Harrow. I legit thought that. Because she's, like, insane the entire book. And so I thought she was going to get tricked into it. It was going to be a reveal on Gideon. The word Gideon is not mentioned until the 85% point. And I was like, what is she? What's she doing? And then we get the reveal. But when he dies, like, Dominicus, the big star, like, collapses. And Ianth, someone, is like...
Yeah.
The entire universe is gonna die, but at least we're killing the Necro Beasts too, so it's, like, not bad. And then the Emperor, like, revives himself and is like, I planned for this. I've been around for 100,000 years. Like, you're dead, and just, like, shoots her in the face and just kills her.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, and the fact that, like, I think it was Augustine that had, like, he could have pushed Jod into, like, the lower parts of the river and then, like, didn't, just made me so angry. I'm like, you worked so hard I can't remember if it was Augustine or Eonth that like helped him, but I'm like, you, I do not like you. I never liked you, but I do not like you even more now.
Yeah, because we get a lot of people being like angry at Harrow for some reason, and this is
Mm-hmm.
another reason I need to reread because I was really confused why Ortis kept trying to kill her. It's like 30 times he tries to kill her, and I'm just like, what is going
Mm.
on? And he has like a quick explanation for it, and it's like, oh, you needed to be killed. I was trying to save you or something, and
Mm.
it didn't stick with me.
Yeah, I honestly do not remember why Gideon the First was trying to kill her. I think it had something to do with he recognized that she had like a messed up lictorhood process and was trying to just like put her out of her misery almost, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because she's bleeding from her head the entire book. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
even get sealed. And the Emperor Jod at one point was like, who is haunting you? And then that's when we
Mhm.
get the surgery scene. And I was like, oh my gosh, everything makes sense, kind of.
Well, yeah, but then you've also got Commander Wake Me Up Inside's soul in the sword as well. Like, she's being haunted both within her head and like outside her head, like in the actual real world, as well as in her own pocket world, I guess. God, she's being haunted on all sides.
But,
This poor girl. If only she had Abigail Pent to help her.
yeah, she was like clearing everything up in the end.
Yeah. Oh, I love how like okay, first off, I love the scenes with all the like AUs, all the like alternative universes for like how she and Gideon could have met. And I
Oh,
love how
yeah.
Abigail just gets like more and more frustrated until she's like, "Oh my god, wake up. Just like get your crap together, kid." And just like she put up with so much throughout the entire thing, and it's just like, this isn't how it happened. This isn't how it happened. This isn't how it freaking happened. Harrow, wake up! And just her frustration with this grieving 16-year-old.
Yeah, because I remember one of the final ones was her and Gideon like making out and stuff. And she's like, "No, like
It's
wake
like,
up."
stop it. Keep your hands to yourselves, children.
We do
Like
get a
Abigail does not support PDA.
yeah, we get a really funny scene which I texted you about, but it's the three-way scene with Jod, Ianth,
Oh my
or not
god.
Ianth, but the two other Gideon the first, I guess, was there. No,
It was Augustine and Mercy Morn, I think.
okay, yeah, those two.
Which
I
I have a meme about that I'm gonna have to send you. But I think it's like the Dios Apate minor that they put into motion, where he's like, "We got to do this," and Mercy Morton's like, "Ugh, I don't want to."
Yeah, because I could not keep track of the names at all, and that's why I should have read it sooner. So
I'll make you a little flow chart to make it easier.
yes, I was definitely in need of a flow chart the whole book, but like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
And
Well,
there were definitely times where like they would reference like the teenagers from the fourth or something, where it's like, "Oh yeah, Isaac," and I'm like, "Wait, there was a guy named Isaac," and I had to like go Google him. Like, who was that?
yeah, we get a lot of like mentions of other houses in book one because I remember I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to really keep track of all these names and
Yeah.
like we know the ninth the most, but all the other ones, it's like we know like one or two maybe. But it
Mm-hmm.
seems like it's not even like separated. They're all the same because we find out they were all friends and like part of the same organization. And that's how
Yeah.
like all the different houses were made. Is that they went to different parts of the universe and were preparing for the big battle. Which I don't know what happened
Mm-hmm.
to that beast. I guess it went into the river hole thing.
Yeah, that's still a bit unclear. But yeah, and the whole like everyone's like, look, we set this up. We did not expect you all to take this so seriously. Like, no, of course we don't care what house we're from because we made them and they're stupid. Like just the derision that the lictors have for like everything that like Harrow and Eonth like grew up knowing. I just love because it's like, no, that's like stupid child stuff. We do not care.
Yeah, because I remember the scene in the first one when they all meet up again, and it's like, oh boy, the fourth house is angry, and this house, like each house had like their own emotion, is what Gideon was thinking, and she was just lusting after everyone. So we weren't getting that world building, but I think she would have noticed that they're all basically the same. There's nothing differentiating from each other except location, but they like, deliberately chose that.
Yeah, like they were built to serve different purposes, but it was all for the same like goal. Because like you have like the second that's like the warriors and then like the treasurers and the librarians and all of that. But like it's literally just to keep the universe running. And especially like how everyone is so annoyed with Harrow being from the ninth because they're like, there wasn't even supposed to be a ninth house. Like, stop. You're taking this all way too seriously, Harrow. Like, this was never meant to happen.
Yeah, because I remember reading the prologue for book 1 when Gideon is on the platform with the spaceship and she's like, I'm leaving. Fuck you all. And she's like sitting there and Harrow and like a robot or someone is like, you can't leave. Like, you're part of the house, the ninth house. And like, that was our like intro to that whole thing. And it's funny now to think that none of it mattered and they're taking it way too seriously.
Which like just reminds me that whole beginning thing of like, you're part of the house just reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean where it's like, you're part of the ship, you can't leave. But like there were so many references in here that I don't think I caught all of them. But I love how Gideon is very like in the first book very against like being called like a part of the ninth or anything, and how everyone's like, yeah, I mean like you're owned by the ninth but you're not actually ninth, like you weren't meant to be here. And then we see like their relationship grow closer, and then Harrow's like, you're the only good thing to come out of my house, and I'm like, oh god, I'm crying now. I love these two so much. Like the pining is so tangible in this book. But yeah, like the whole thing of like, even I don't know how to put this into words because I feel like it's a larger theme, but like you see how Harrow even at the beginning is like relying on what she knows and is like trying to like veil herself like a ninth nun and is trying to like reconnect to those teachings, and then Jod is just like, oh no, that's stupid, like that's fake, get over it, move on, kid. But then you start to learn that like, no, Anastasia, the one that started the ninth, actually like realized what Jod was doing, and then the ninth is almost like a resistance thing specifically designed against Jod. And I'm just like, yes, Harrow, reclaim like your childhood, do it. And it's just, it was so satisfying to watch him like belittle the ninth so much, and then have the ninth be one of the things that I believe will take him down. Because like Harrow was the one that released Electo, or like got into the tomb whenever she was a kid. So.
And I'm wondering now, because at the end, right before the epilogue, we get a POV from her where she takes the body out and puts herself in. And I was like, where's this going? How's this going to affect I guess that's how we're going to get the POV from her. Is that now she's going to wake up from the stasis, because she's not dead. She's in like stasis chamber mode. And so that's what I was thinking. But maybe someone found the body and was like, oh shit, can't let Jod see this. Like, let's take it, let's train it, let's train her to become like anti-Jod. So I just thought of that.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, interesting. A lot of the interpretations that I have seen, not saying this is correct because I think what you just said is very interesting. I'd love to see that done. But a lot of people thought that was more of like she's putting herself in the tomb, like she's taking the back seat in the body now or something. Like, because we know that Gideon, based off of like what happened at the end, still has control of Harrow's body. So there's like a question of where is Harrow's like soul now? And I don't know if it like went to Electo's body and now she's like hitching a ride there or what is happening. But I'm very curious to see, like, I have no real theories because I'm like, this could go literally anywhere. Like, there's no way to predict what Tamsin is going to actually write for the next book.
Yeah, and she pushed it back by a whole year, too, because it was 2019, 2020, and then this year.
Yeah.
And she was like, I need more time, so I'm curious what's making her.
Yeah.
Because these books are, like, pretty long. They're 500 pages, and she did it in a year, each of these. And it's so, like, layered. And on her website or something, or the back of the book, I think it's in the acknowledgments where she said that the whole thing with Harrow being insane and like having the mixed body thing going on was like something from her own life of her with her schizophrenia. And I was like, okay. It was something in the acknowledgments. Grab my book here and look.
That's really interesting because I was kind of wondering, because I know that, like, not to get too serious into this conversation, but like, I deal with like chronic pain a lot, and like I have very loose joints, so my body just kind of goes everywhere and does its own thing. And so like reading how Harrow relates to her body as like a tool was really interesting, and that she's like, yeah, this is painful, but it's what I need to do to like get this done. And that kind of like disregard that she had was really interesting to read, like as almost like chronic illness representation. Like I was reading that, I was like, this is very similar to how I know quite a few other people with EDS like view our bodies. So like reading that was just really fascinating. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I don't think it was, but I really enjoyed like that aspect.
Yeah, I have the paragraph here. It says Harrow Nonagesimus, I guess that's how you say it. It makes sense in my ears. Did not have anyone to put soluble, banana-flavored antipsychotics under her tongue for her condition. I do, and therefore I would like to thank every key worker in my past who had to administer the medication because they were always nice about it, and often I was not. So.
Oh, that's nice.
It was cute, and I was like, that's amazing that she dealt with it so great. Because it makes sense, because she, has this. So, and she deals with it every day.
Yeah.
Makes me think of Brandon Sanderson.
Harrow's,
I was just,
and
how
like his mental illness representation.
Yeah, because he doesn't have any of that, but he utilizes like interviews and nonfiction to like get into the minds of people with these non-normative, I get all the names wrong, like neurodivergent, right? Like things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because reading Harrow's perspective and like the description of how Harrow sees herself, and like, God, that makes so much more sense now because I was reading it and I'm like, this feels really real. Like this feels very personal to read. And so now knowing that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that like Tamsin is doing well and has those lovely banana flavored medications.
Yep.
And like has learned to take care of herself, because Harrow needs someone to teach her to take care of herself too. Like this girl has no self-preservation instincts whatsoever.
Yeah, and there's a great scene in the first book that always stands out to me when they are doing the trial where they're trying to figure out the weird like pinpoint like magic stuff, and Gideon and Harrow have to share minds and have Harrow look through the oh my gosh, that didn't get resolved until this book. They're getting lectureship done in book 1 by seeing through each other's eyes. Yep. Okay, wow.
It was all preparation. You gotta lay the track there, yeah.
Because it was just a murder mystery, is what it was sold as, but actually they were already training to be a lictor. Okay, that just blew
And of
my
course, you
mind.
don't get any of that from Gideon's perspective because Gideon is just like, oh my god, pretty girl,
Corona Beth.
muscles. Like, oh my gosh, Corona Beth and her hair and Dulcinea and all of her. Like,
Cytherea.
just, yes.
That was the older woman, right, who ended up being the one who killed the person.
Cytherea, yeah. Yeah, who would like took over Dulcie's place. Um, which like was so sad whenever you know that like Palamedes and like Camilla had been talking to her and then like Cytherea showed up and just like didn't acknowledge them. And I'm like, of course Palamedes is like sad now. Like at first I thought he was just being like stupidly jealous. But now I'm like, oh, you poor kid. Like, oh. But yeah, they're like, of course, Gideon does not notice any of this stuff. She's just like, ugh, gotta go do this trial for like Harrow, and then I can go back to flirting. And in reality, they're like preparing to become lictors and learning what all the skills that they need. I love how subtle all of that world building is in the first book.
Yeah, because that was a common complaint I heard about. And everyone was like, of course, like, there's no world building in this book. It's Gideon. It's like very limited POV. Like, you don't get any outside stuff.
Yeah,
And it is
which is
first
why I
person,
love.
so.
Yeah. I loved the way that that was done because like it doesn't. I know it's a phrase I use a lot when we're like talking on the podcast about like Brandon Sanderson, but it doesn't throw you in the deep end as much. Where you kind of get into this book and you're like, okay, you've got like teenage girl who's crushing on everyone and like is trying to solve a murder mystery, and that's pretty par for the course whenever it comes to like YA sci-fi. And then like once you start getting more involved, then like it starts picking up, and then second book it's like, nope, we gotta kill God. And like immediately things change. And so it wasn't like there wasn't the basis for this because Tamsin did a really good job of building up that basis for everything that happens in book two. It's just that none of us noticed it because we all were also focusing on how pretty Corona Beth's hair was.
Yeah, because that was my main. That's how I remembered her really well. And it's really funny to get Harrow's POV on all these other characters where we just got long descriptions about how lean the arm muscles were. And like this, that, and the other. And Harrow is like, her hair looks kind of thin. And it's just like so critical of everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And which, like, I was just realizing that this last night, but the emphasis that Gideon put on, like, describing everyone's eyes, also, like, she noticed that sort of stuff, even if she didn't notice the rest of the world. So that's how, like, even before they mentioned Camilla's name in the, like, epilogue, everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's Camilla and Palamedes because of just, we get this, like, one single description of eyes. And, like, that was already set up in book one with Gideon being like, oh, they have such pretty eyes.
Yeah, I love the whole eye thing with this series. Because I kind of noticed that when Gideon was like, oh, those eyes. And I was like, I never thought it would have such emphasis. Like, especially at the end of this book was like, oh yeah, me and Electa, we traded eyes. Oh, you're not Harrow, you're Gideon. Those eyes. And it's like all these things that were mentioned once in the last book, probably in the middle, have now come.
Yeah, and yeah, and just like how I love how one of the big reveals is just Gideon's eyes, like even without them being like in Harrow's body at the time, which is in itself weird. But like whenever they all the lictors see those eyes, they immediately know like, okay, you lied to us. Like those were God's eyes to begin with. And so this whole thing, like we had to kill our cavaliers when we didn't need to, and you lied to us, and like now we've got to kill you. Like how just seeing Gideon's eyes was enough to like throw out all the plans that they had and just be like, that's it, we got to do this now because things have changed.
Yeah, because there's that part where he's like apologizing and all that, and everyone's like, "No, like we don't forgive you at all." I think Mercy
No,
Morn says
like-
she forgives him, but everyone else is like, "What?" It's like we're thousands of years old. We still
Yeah,
hurt
I
after
think-
that.
Yeah, I think Mercy says she forgives him and then like stabs him or something. Like,
Yeah,
I gotta
she's the
say, I do
assassin.
kind of love. Hmm. I do kind of love Mercy Morn. Like, she's just so like sarcastic and just like so done with everything all the time. Where I'm like, okay, I shouldn't, but I kind of love her. So the fact that she was like, yeah, I forgive you, and then just like pulled out a knife or whatever she did was just so in character.
She made him explode. She like connected to his
Yeah.
heart, and
Right.
there's a long
'Cause she's
paragraph,
like that.
and it's
Mhm.
like first his head exploded, and then those shards of skull exploded, and it's just like crazy.
Yeah.
Cascading.
He just like puffs into dust
yeah,
because like
it's like a fine mist of red. I think is the final,
Mhm.
and then just
Yeah.
gets sucked up into the void, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he died, and then he's like, nope, and he comes back alive, and the river kills him.
Yeah. Because like I love how that's kind of we don't know a ton about Mercy Morn, like her strength until that part, because you see some of Harrow's biases come in where Harrow's like, ugh, she's a skin magician or skin necromancer. Like, that is so far beneath me. Like, obviously, bone magic is so much better. And then, like, you see Mercy Morn, which is like a single touch, just exploded God. And just like, oh crap, you have been trash talking that. Like, she could have killed you so quickly.
Yeah, Mercy.
And like, even with like, you were able to survive Gideon the First, but you would not have survived Mercy Morn if she wanted to kill you.
Yeah, because the first assassination attempt on Harrow, like right in the beginning of the book, where I was like, oh, this is gonna be like a pursuer situation from Rhythm of War, and I was like, oh no, like, but it was a lot better than that. But in that first one, Mercy Morn walks in and is like, what are you doing? Don't do this when I'm around, because I'm gonna stop you.
Just like spraying Gideon the First with water, just like, stop it. Stop trying to kill the child.
Yeah, it was just so funny. Like, everything with Ordis / Gideon the First. Like, all these little things that is gonna make rereading just so satisfying.
I honestly, I was going to try and work on the podcast today and do some other stuff. I'm probably just going to sit down and continue rereading because, like, okay, I have to find that one line that I read last night. I think it's because in the prologue they're about to die, and Eonth is like, just let me fix this. Like, let me undo the surgery. You can fully absorb Gideon, and then we can, like, go rule the world together, pretty much. And so, like, it's there from page 1.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, okay, here. It's on page 16. This is Eon's talking. It says, turn around, she breathed. Harry, all you have to do is turn around. I know what you've done, and I know how to reverse it, if only you'd ask me to. Just ask. It's that easy. Dying is for suckers. With you and me at full power, we could rip apart this resurrection beast and come away unscathed. We could save the galaxy, save the Empire, and let them talk of us back home of Eonth and Harrowhark. And it says, the past is dead, they're both dead, but you and I are alive. And so then Harrowhark says something about, like, are they dead, or are they just corpses that we're dragging behind us to, like, get power? And, like, that's already there from, like, just let me fix this. And, of course, in the first read, I'm like, what the heck is Eonth talking about? Like, shut up. And I'm like, oh my god, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I was just reading along, and I was like, it's all there. Like, the final chapter is right there. Like, and later she says, choke me, daddy. And that was, like, the first name that I saw.
Yeah. Like, I gotta say, I love how Tamsin Muir bridges a lot of, like, her really, like, tough, like, there's a whole lot of mental illness. There's a whole lot of, like, body horror. There's a lot of just, like, very heavy topics that would be very difficult to read on their own. Like, even just the amount of grief that Harrowhark is going through is difficult to read at times. especially those first few chapters, whenever she's just like almost out of her mind with grief and like just constantly puking and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be really tough to read on its own. But then you get this like really light humor thrown in at times and mixed with like the gallows humor from the first book. And it does such a good job of making it doesn't invalidate the tough things, but it makes them feel more real almost. Because I feel like for a lot of people, humor is their coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing the characters use it in some of the worst situations is just so human almost to like read. And I love how well it's done. And of course, people in the future are going to reference memes. It may not be these memes, but like that's going to be a thing that continues. In like there's so many conversations about like the Lord of the Rings and like the Narnia books about how there's like references to like their letters. So this isn't a new thing. And so people that are like crapping on Tamsin Muir for adding in memes frustrates me so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is my tiny rant on the subject.
Yeah, because I heard about that a lot, and I was waiting for Harambe to show up. I think I talked about that last night. I was waiting for that. And we didn't get that. It was more like, again, with Commander Wake, Oop, there goes reality, or whatever, the Eminem reference. It's like little things that make sense. Like in the cause I didn't even notice that one that you pointed out, the 0 pizza, 2 beef, or whatever. I was like, I didn't even
beef. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a meme, and you showed it. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was like pretty old meme.
Yeah, I read a really good analysis somewhere online of this whole conversation, and they put it so much better than I ever could. But kind of how in this book, and even in the first book, there's kind of things where you're reading and you're like, I feel like there's more here, but like, I don't understand what they're saying quite yet. And kind of how memes give off the same feel if you are not like in on it, you're like, there's something here that I know other people are reacting to, but like I'm not quite getting it yet. And so how that kind of will continue that feeling, even if you don't get the memes to begin with, like they're not super overt all the time. They're not like in your face. It's just, if you get it, you get it. And that adds to the book. And if you don't, then that's something that if you really want to, you can look up on your own time and be like, oh yeah, so that was a thing from back in like 2005. But like, I don't think it takes away from the story whatsoever.
Yeah, like a lot of them I didn't notice. And I think it's because, I mean, especially now, everyone's around memes. Especially on Discord. Like, we get so many memes coming through. Lots of little references. Some people don't understand them, and we need to explain it. And so there was times where I read a meme quote, and it sounded like something familiar, and I would stop reading. I read it again, but like, oh yeah, that's this meme. And like, it didn't distract, like, at all. It like made sense. The Emperor says a few that like makes total sense. It has the same mood and like kind of conveying what
there's been like some analysis on that. With how the Emperor is the one that makes the most like jokes and says the most memes, because like he's supposed to be from like our time period or something, and so he knows all the same memes that we do, and then in the future can't stop like referencing them even when people do not know what he's talking about. And I kind of like that interpretation, because there's so many people that are like, wait, this means that Jod knows this meme, and then they'll like post like a really old meme, and everyone's like, and then he has to live with that knowledge. And I love anything that craps on Jod. He is such a terrible person.
Yeah, and that was one crazy world building that I didn't expect at all, was that Jod is from our time, because it's really easy to think of fantasy, and this is why I love The Wheel of Time, is that it's technically a post-apocalyptic story. Just like this, kind of.
Yeah.
And I love the details where I think it makes me think about the epilogue, and if that is in our time right now. And there's like some weird time travel stuff going on. And that she's the first lictor as they discovered necromancy and all that.
Yeah. God, that'd be interesting. Um, sorry, I'm now contemplating all of the possible things that go along with that. But yeah, I really enjoyed that because it gives you more knowledge of the background. Like it's not lazy, but it does some of the world building for you, I think. Because now you can go, okay, so Dominicus is obviously not like our sun. And so you have to look at it and be like, okay, well, are the 9 houses the 9 planets? Because of course we're still counting Pluto here. Screw anyone that says that Pluto isn't
Yeah,
a planet.
it's an orbiting body. It's like that's the only.
Mm,
That's how it's done.
I am an aerospace engineering major, and I still count Pluto as a planet. So fight me, people. And obviously, the 9th house would then be Pluto because it's the farthest away from the sun, and they're constantly talking about like how cold and dark it is there. But like, there's a lot to look into there. Of like, did he just take over our solar system, or did he rebuild it? Because they talk about how he had to rebuild the world, and that's why he's connected to Dominicus. And so, even if our solar system is destroyed, that doesn't mean that like the rest of the universe is. And so, would sacrificing our solar system to kill the resurrection beasts really be that bad? And so, there's a lot of like moral questioning there, I think, whenever they're like, yeah, we're going to kill Jod, even though it kills the entire unit, like, it kills Dominicus because it's the right thing to do. And just, I really like kind of how those topics are brought up, especially now that we know that it is like our future.
Yeah, and it was. We haven't talked about the whole assassinating planets that Harrow does. She does
Oh
13
my
of them.
god, yeah.
And at the final one is when we discover that she's on the pocket world. Is Earth, I think? Because she talks about how
Yeah.
nasty the ground is and it's full of worms and beetles. And I was like, that's just life. Like in North Carolina, that's
Yeah.
all of our ground. It's just worms
Yeah.
and like bugs and all that. And it made me think
Mm-hmm.
of that. And she sees, I don't even think she sees any sort of hint of civilization. She just sits
God,
down and like fights a bull or something. I don't know
I'm
what
gonna have
animal that
to
was.
reread that. Okay, gosh, I'm gonna be texting you as I reread because I didn't even notice that the first time through. Um, but I did. I had a lot of feelings about that because, of course, you got Blood of Eden coming in and being like, "Yeah, necromancy's bad," and I'm like, "Okay, you're boring. Moving on." Like, of course, like I want to keep that going because the storyline and everything. But then their justification of that with like how in order to have like such powerful necromancy as they do, it has to come from death on the planets. And so they're going through and killing like the planet itself in order to create this store of like thaunergic energy. And then like is that moral? And like even right now we're dealing with questions about like conservation and what we need to do to help the planet and like prevent the destruction of our civilization, whereas they're going through and just like murdering a planet. And so I'm like, yeah, there is kind of a moral question there of like, is necromancy even like, was necromancy supposed to exist? Because it seems like no. And if so, what do we do about that now? Because of course we love our necromantic characters and all that they do. So like I don't want to see them destroyed, but also let's maybe stop murdering planets. Just maybe.
Yeah, because in the final one, when she kills Earth, because she meets the Eden, first of Eden, or Blood of Eden's people,
Mm-hmm.
and they're on a spacecraft, and she's like, this is so simple spacecraft, and it's like, that's probably the original one they used to start, like,
Mm-hmm.
exploring space. And so,
Yeah.
she gives a description, like, how it takes a few days for all life on that planet to die. They have no idea. She says like the sun will set and then it just doesn't set again. And
Mm,
it turns into like
yeah.
weird soil and so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. It was a really like cool and also awful it's just, like thing that happens in this book series.
I feel like yeah, I feel like that's the best way to describe the book series is like it's really cool, but it's also really awful what they're doing at times.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was looking at the cover because you were talking about Pluto, I think that is Pluto on the cover. There's a planet behind her, which I never realized that was a planet. I saw that glint on the bottom, and that's like the sun or the moon.
Okay, I've got to check that out once this is over because I have my dust jacket off while I read. And it's over on my bookshelf. But yeah, gosh, like there's so much. It's such subtle world building that she does, and I really enjoy it. Because like as much as I do love Brandon Sanderson, I mean I'm on a Brandon Sanderson podcast, so I get a lot of world building. I really liked seeing the different ways that it can be done and how it isn't like a, hey, you're on Roshar now. This dude's a slave. He's also very sad. Deal with it, sort of thing. It was like a, okay, we're gonna get you into things and then slowly reveal more details, but like in a very deliberate manner. I thought was really creative. I haven't seen it done a ton with the way that like Tamsin does it.
Yeah, the closest thing to me is Wheel of Time. I'm not going to spoil anything, but in book 1, they find a Mercedes-Benz, like, little thing, like, on the car, which shows a symbol. They find that. There's 3 white stars on a blue background.
I missed that.
Yeah. I was listening to the Real Reeves, and they popped it up. But it's Wheel of Time is described as 6,000 years of our future. Like in the future, 6,000 years after present day. And so, because you've read book 4, right?
Yeah, I'm currently in the middle of book 5.
Okay, so in book 4,
and so you get the whole reveal at Radine, I think.
Viridian.
Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Sure.
But there's a part in that I was freaking out over because we see the Age of Legends, which is before the breaking of the world. And that entire section, they're talking about skyscrapers, they're talking about flying cars and airplanes and like all this stuff. And that's when it clicked for me on how awesome the series was for me. Because I love that concept of this is our world. Like, this is us in the future. And there's lots of cool things throughout the series where we get there. I'm not done yet, but starting book 11 today, probably.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've always been kind of ambivalent whenever it comes to that idea. It's like, we'll see what happens. And so whenever I found out with like Wheel of Time that was supposed to be our future, I didn't love it. I was like, I almost want this to be its own thing. But once I got to book 4, I was like, okay, I kind of see where they're going with this, and this makes more sense. Because I was struggling before then to connect what all they're going through with, like, our world. And so seeing that, like, the stages of destruction almost made a lot more sense.
Yeah, because I'm not terribly versed in the background info on how the One Power was discovered, but it seems like, from what me and Cheyenne have discussed on my episodes, is that it is a technological force of nature that they just discovered. Like, not gravity, but something like that. Was like, they had, it's always been around, but they could never tap into it. It's like realizing that cells
I can't harness it.
Yeah. And like how there's a whole nother world that you can't see. And so, when I discovered that, I was like, I was totally for that. And this series has done the same thing, but with necromancy, and I love that. The idea that we could perhaps tap into that.
Yeah, and okay, I know we're making a lot of like Brandon Sanderson Wheel of Time connections, but Abigail Pent reminds me of Navani so much in that everyone's like, ugh, she's so boring. She's just a scholar. Like, stop giving us random facts. And I'm like, no, keep talking, please. I need to know. And so like, even in the first book, Abigail Pent would be like, yeah, I think there might be like a whole spirit ghost world. And everyone's like, shut up, Abby. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, because they finally discover it in this book. Yeah, because there's a whole thing beyond the river that we can like tap into. Why haven't we done this? And the God Emperor is like, no, don't do that. That's dangerous.
Yeah. And she like is mentioning all this stuff, and everyone's like, "Well, that's like heretical," and it's like, "Yeah, well, God's an asshole, so do it anyway." And just like every time that Abigail starts talking, I'm like, please just let her finish the book. She'll give us so much information. Like, I love Gideon and Harrow, but they're not always the smartest whenever it comes to putting the big picture together. So let's just hand things over to the like undead adult here.
Well, I hope my theory of Alecto being the POV is good, because Camilla, I think, has a lot of that info in the big picture.
Yeah.
And she'll work with Abigail, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what they do with Palamedes here, because the general consensus in like the fandom is that he is alive in some form, because like she did the whole thing where she anchored him from the river world that was being destroyed to like his hand, and there's a lot of like fan art that I've seen where just Camilla with like a skeletal hand on her shoulder, like from the Addams family. And just like there's so much going on there that everyone's like, okay, what's going to happen to Palamedes? We need to know. And so seeing him interact with Alecto, I think would also be very interesting. Because I loved him and Camilla to begin with. I think they're both really interesting characters. And then adding in like God's worst enemy, I think would be a great thing.
Yeah, it sucks that there's still 6 months left of this year, and then however many months into 2022.
Oh my god, yeah.
So I'm gonna have to reread it.
Oh, definitely. I can tell you, I'm probably gonna reread this like 5 times before the next book comes out. Like, this very quickly became one of my favorite series. Like, I expected to enjoy it, but I didn't expect to love it as much as I do.
Yeah, because book 1 was just solid, and that was a strong 4 out of 5 on Goodreads for me. And this book, I gave it 5 out of 5. I was like, everything comes together so well, but there's still mysteries for the 3rd book, and I have no idea where that's gonna go. Because at the end of book 1, it's Harrow and the Emperor talking, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna hunt down some big creatures. Kind of that, but and this book is like, I guess Alecto is being trained, and I don't even know if that's Alecto.
Yeah,
like, that's just my theory.
Who knows? I cannot wait. But actually, sorry, your Mercedes-Benz comment reminded me of the like one of the first memes that I saw. I think was in this book. And it was when Harrow's like reading the like sheet of paper or flimsy or whatever they call it, and she gets like this crazy message that's like, you're gonna die in 10 days or something. And she hands it over to Ortis, and he's like, no, it's just like this weird S thing that like looks kind of like an 8 but looks kind of like an S. And I'm like, did she really include, like, I don't even know what to call that, because it never had a name. It was just like, you know, the fancy S
that everyone did
on the playground.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't notice
and
that.
I'm like, did she just do that? So yeah, it's in like one of the Pocket World scenes whenever Abigail's like trying to get her to like realize what's happening, and Harrow's just like seeing weird stuff. But yeah, there was so much. God, there's so much to unpack here that it would take like 2 days to do so. But just I loved the general storyline, and then how well it mixed with like just these little moments of humor with like the alternate universes and like the kids being like kids in the alternate universe and stuff like that. And just like all the ways in which like it's still a very serious book at times, but you also get these moments of just like, wow, these really are teenagers, or at least I did. I guess you didn't.
I thought Harrow was in the 30s.
Yeah.
With the way that Gideon talks about her, she's very much like older teacher who's like college professor who's making me do all this stuff. That's how I view.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
She's like, oh, I gotta go do this, gotta go do that.
Gideon definitely is simultaneously very frustrated and annoyed with Harrow while also putting her on a very high pedestal. And so I can see how that would translate into like reverence for like an older teacher. But like in this book, whenever you get Gideon coming back and like taking control of Harrow's body, she gets so offended that Harrow wouldn't like absorb her soul and kill her. She's like, I died for you, and now like you hate me so much that you can't even let me die for you. And then Harrow's on the other side, like grieving, like I didn't deserve it. I can't even conceive of a world that doesn't have you in it. And they're both just being so stupid at times. Where like you are literally in one head. There aren't two heads to like knock together. Like how are you both this stupid while sharing a brain? And so I loved how human all the characters were, because they make so many mistakes. They say so many stupid things. You have like Gideon just like pining over whatever pretty girl walks past her. And like it really helped build the characters as people instead of as like players in the plot.
Yeah, and it's really funny because the whole her like lusting after people. I remember there were a couple scenes where they were like having dinner and like ceremonies and stuff, where she was just thinking about people, and we got no info on what anybody was saying because she's so in her head, being like, "Look at Corona Beth, look at Harrow," and it's like, what did we miss in all that dialogue where she was just like not even paying attention?
And like every so often they'll mention that like, oh yeah, like Abigail Penn and Palamedes and Harrow are talking, and I'm like, oh my god, pay attention.
What are they saying?
Like, I'm sure they're saying something super interesting, but no, we're just gonna like admire Corona Beth from a distance. Like, Gideon, sweetheart, no.
Straight to horny gel to her.
Yeah, I can't say anything besides I really enjoyed this series, and I cannot wait to see where it goes next. I love these characters so much, and I know whatever happens, they will get themselves into the worst mess possible, and hopefully they will be able to get out of it mostly alive.
Can we hype up what's coming after Locked Tomb that I discovered last night? Oh my god.
I need to hear more. I need to know more about this.
All we know is that it's going to be a collection of novellas where it's like cyberpunk lesbian gunslingers.
Yes.
And like cowboy hats and like bandoliers and all that. And I'm like, give me that now. I can't even wait.
I need it. I need that in my life right now.
Like, they've already sold it, and Tamsin was like, yeah, I'll get to it like after Tomb. And I'm like, do it now.
Please, we're begging you. We need something. Just throw us a bone at this point.
I can't wait to see what she does after this series, because this is such a hyped trilogy, and we're not even done.
I can't believe that this is her debut. Like, I cannot believe that this is like the first series that she's written and released.
Yeah, because she has small novellas, which I have no interest in. Because I've seen a few authors where like they write a really good first series, and the novellas are like them practicing. It's kind of like what Brandon did for his first 13 novels that he wrote before doing Elantris. Elantris was like number 7, and he had to like heavily edit it once it got chosen.
Yeah. Of course, Brandon does nothing small. Everyone else is like, I'll write some novellas, and Brandon's like, I'll write 13 novels.
And and then the 7th one gets published after he finishes 13th.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be upset if Tamsin Muir had written like 13 novels beforehand, then could just like release them very quickly. Because I mean, like, I read Gideon the 9th, not Gideon, yeah, Gideon. I read Gideon at the end of December in 2020, and then I started Harrow, I think, at like the very beginning of January. Because like I literally closed the book on Gideon, cried for a little bit, and then got on Amazon and like quickly ordered Harrow to get like 2-day shipping, and like I need it here now. And so whenever I finished Harrow, I was like, well, you got like 2019, 2020, it's got to be 2021, and we're already in 2021, so like it'll be here soon. And just the God, I was like heartbroken whenever it got pushed back. I'm like, no, not my babies. I need to know what happens.
Yeah, because I got Gideon like pretty early, I think, around the same time you got it. But I didn't read it until March of this year, because I was in the same boat, like 19, 20, okay, 21. Like I'm a quarter of the way through the year. It's March.
Yeah.
And then I think that's when I started the channel, and I was like, okay, I'll just start. And I'll just rewatch my video to like remind myself. And now that I finished book 2, I'm like, no, I'm just gonna reread both books. Like I'm not even gonna watch like my old reviews. My first video, that was like the first video I made, was Gideon the Ninth review.
Yeah, I think that was one of the ones that I watched and commented on, and that's what started this whole video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I, of course, like, I do not want to rush Tamsin whatsoever. Like, I get that quarantine has been so hard for so many people, especially like on mental health. So like, she can take her time, of course, but I do kind of want it now.
It'll be worth the wait. I have full trust in
definitely. Her. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, would I like it now, but do I know that she also needs to like take her time and like make it as amazing as it can be? Yes.
Seems
Luckily,
like
I've got a whole bunch. Yeah. Which means hopefully we'll get the novellas soon afterwards.
Yes.
I'm trying to have some positivity about this.
I hope she does like a bigger series. Like kind of like how Brandon does. I don't need a 40-book series, but like the Cosmere, but
oh my god,
maybe something like Stormlight, like just 10 books.
With getting ready for the podcast and everything, I've been reading so many Sanderson books. And so whenever I read this, and I was like, wait, it's only a trilogy? There's only 3? And like, I was so used to like, yeah, there's gonna be like 10 books in this series, that like the idea that someone would only write 3 books was shocking to me. But I gotta say, I honestly don't have an issue with it being a trilogy, because I do think that this is a very fast-paced series. And so I don't want any of these plot lines to be unnecessarily like stretched out in order to fit more books. I definitely wouldn't mind some like other books within the same universe though, if she wanted to do that.
I don't know what she would do. Maybe background stuff. Like
yeah, I know that there's been another. Hold on, there was another book released that was like a companion book almost, that gives some more background information. But I cannot remember what it's called. Let me see. Okay, it might have been like extra content that was released with the book for like the paperback editions, I think, that gave some more background information on the houses and stuff. And so reading the excerpts that I have, it's been very interesting. But I wouldn't mind like a novella where we see like the 4th and 5th house interacting with like Abigail Pent and Magnus, and then like the 2 kids and like their lives before it, or like Camilla and Palamedes, just stuff like that. Like I would not mind at all if we got to see a bit more of that.
It can be like the Skyward novellas coming. It's like 5 of them, or 3 to 5. I haven't read
Skyward yet, so
the first one's great.
Oh, okay. Cool. It's on my TBR for some time this year. But I've currently got like 10 to 12 books on my TBR for this month.
Oh, wow.
And I've only started reading one of them. So
it's only the 18th.
Gotta pick up the pace. Yep. I mean, I know I should read all the books that I got, like I already had on my physical TBR, but I also just got the Jasmine Throne, and I kind of want to start reading that.
That's so me with, I'm trying to look. I have a lot of books I did by physical TBR, as inspired by
Yeah,
your
I
chaotic
saw.
one. And
Yep.
like I've stopped buying books. Like it's so
Yep.
hard to like justify it now.
Same. I'm not buying any others. The Jasmine Throne was a pre-order because I was trying to support more like new authors this year.
Hmm.
Um, and especially like authors of color because I know that I need to like diversify my shelf. And I follow Tasha Suri, I think is her
Hmm.
last name, on Twitter. And so she was like really hyping up her book. It's like a sapphic, South Asian inspired, like kind of villain novel.
Hmm.
And it sounded fascinating. It's an adult fantasy. And I was like, okay, I got to pre order this. And then I've got like Gear Breakers, which is again sapphic, like large robots, enemies to lovers coming in at the end of the
Oh
month.
man.
And then I've got She Who Became the Sun. That's the last one that I've
Oh
pre-ordered.
yeah, that's on my TBR.
Yeah, that's coming out sometime in July, I think. So I those are the only books that will be arriving because at the beginning of the year I was like, I need these now.
Yeah, I just bought Poppy War a few weeks ago, and I'm really
Oh
excited for
yeah,
that one.
I got Poppy War recently as well because it was on sale, and I've really been meaning to get into it for like a year now. So especially since I follow the author on Twitter, and her new book that's coming out sounds so good. So like, I want to read this series before I start like moving on from her backlog.
Yeah, because what's great is that it just wrapped up this year, so that's why
Hmm.
I'm motivated now. So I bought book one, gonna read that, but I finished the Lacanius trilogy this month. Finally, took me
Oh,
so
nice.
long. It is not worth the read because everyone sells it as the best ending in fantasy ever because there's a lot of time travel
Mm.
stuff and it doesn't fall apart at all. And so, but the issue is that the characters suck and it's on
Ooh.
purpose because the author is like, I want to tell the story. I don't really care about the characters. I want to do time travel and do that. So there's one great character, like that's it. I have a whole like
Oh
video
gosh.
with non-spoiler review coming soon next week, I think. But
Yeah. No, I'm such a character driven reader that
yeah, same.
I think I would have DNF'd the first book. Like I can't handle it whenever characters just serve to move the plot forward.
Yeah, because I read book one with a book club like last year when I was like getting back into reading. Because before last year, I was reading 5 books a year at most, and it was usually Brandon Sanderson
Mm.
stuff, just rereading it over and over again. And that was the one everyone chose. I was like, okay, fine, and I got all 3 books for like my birthday, so I read it. Book one was pretty good, very Wheel of Time esque, and Brandon Sanderson,
Mm.
and those like the two that I'm really familiar with now. And then book two was just a slog. It was so bad,
Oh.
and everyone was like, "No, it gets better. It gets better. Read the ending." And these books are 800 pages each. They're huge.
Oh no.
And the final book is 814, and it's huge hardback. Because in the Discord we were complaining about the hardback versus paperback yesterday,
Yeah.
and that was like the
Yeah.
example I
That.
used. I was like, it's too big, like, and it was not worth it. The ending is great,
Mm.
but just read Brandon Sanderson. Like you get the
Yeah.
same plot elements, everything.
That's one of my goals for this year is to be more comfortable with DNFing books because I really fall into like the sunk cost fallacy where it's like, but I've
Yeah,
already read like half of it, so I should just finish it and then I should finish the series. And I don't have time for that. I have so many better books to be reading that like if I don't like it, then I'm just gonna take it back to my local like bookstore and get something better.
yeah. I'm on NetGalley now, which is like a
Oh,
review,
nice.
like ebook thing. They send
Yeah,
physical stuff.
the
I don't
arcs
want
and
that.
everything.
Yeah, and I've been DNFing so many of those, and I at
Mm.
least try to go to 50% because I read Kali Cry by someone I don't know. I talked about it in my month video, but that was it was just like City of Bones. Like every plot point was the same. So
Oh,
I
okay.
think you've read it, but like it started the same as City of Bones, and then it was like, oh no, creature attacks the apartment. Go to magical place. Oh, kind of hot dudes who guide the plot, and the and I hit that 50%. I was like, I'm done, and I had
Mm.
to leave a very average review without trying to offend anyone because I want to
Oh,
continue to get arcs, but
yeah. Okay, we need to like chat about have you read any farther in the um Shadowhunters
I
world?
haven't. I've been meaning to,
Okay,
but I don't want to buy any more books
that's completely
until I
fair.
finish.
Yeah. I was like, whenever you read the next one, I want to know your opinion because I have not read these books for years. And so getting like, I read them whenever I was in like sixth or seventh grade. So I want to get like an actual adult's perspective on it because I know that there are very mixed feelings about the series as a whole within the like book community.
Yeah, a lot of people in my personal life kept telling me about it. Because I remember that
Mm.
cover with the shirtless dude, the one I have of City of Bones. Like, I remember that. I saw it in the bookstore for $1, and I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna read this. And I got it. And I sent a picture to it to one of my friends, and she was like, oh my god, give me that right now. I will pay you $20 for that. And I was like, if you want to pay $20, go to Barnes and Noble and get a new copy. Because that's probably how much it costs. Maybe $7 if it's mass market trade back or whatever, paperback.
Yeah, I got very lucky because I read all of them from my local library. Like, I didn't really buy books as a kid, so I didn't have a copy of them. And I went to Goodwill with my friend just to see like what books they had, and they had the box set of the first three books there for like $10. And I'm like, okay, I have to. Like, I can't just say no to this. And then I've been checking thrift books to try and get the rest because they changed the cover design, which the new covers look so much better. I completely get that. But I already have this set of the three original covers. And so I kind of want to stick with that. So I've been going on thrift books to see if they have any like more of them, but I'm not buying them until I finish like the rest of my physical TBR.
Yeah, it's funny because I always complain about my Wheel of Time last four books, 11 to 14. It's my grocery
Mm.
store bread aisle editions. Because it looks like the ones you see of like romance novels. It's just the wheel and the
Yeah.
snake and the different colors. I'm like, what a boring cover. I love the original ones so much more.
Oh gosh, I've got mainly original ones because again I got them off thrift books because I am cheap. But like I get so many weird looks reading those in public because everyone's like, "What is that? That looks interesting." Like it's very much got that like older fantasy art cover, which like I can definitely enjoy, but when you don't know what you're looking at, it looks very weird.
Yeah, the Crown of Swords one looks real bad. That's the one. That's the blue
Yes.
one where he looks like he belongs in a 1920s boxing like video. Everything else in that cover
Yeah.
is cool, but Rand looks awful.
Oh yeah, the Great Hunt was really weird because I was looking at the Great Hunt cover and I'm like, who is this supposed to be? And also Loyal just looks really weird. Like, huh. All right then.
Yeah, I have a pretty warped headcanon of Loyal, and I'm trying to shake it because it switches between Shrek or the troll from Harry Potter. And
Oh
everyone is like, no.
no. Oh,
But I think it's
poor
Path of.
Loyal.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what book it is. I think it's Path of Daggers. That's the one where it has Loyal again on the cover. And I'm
Mm,
slowly
okay.
morphing my headcanon to that one. But it's like super small. He's in the background. So, yeah.
Yeah. Also just like okay, like quickly speaking of good covers and art and stuff, I have once again returned my phone background to intimidating looking Gideon because I'd like switched off from it for a bit, but Gideon was just too hot in this picture to not put as my like phone's wallpaper. And just like the sunglasses, I love how that's used because everyone's like, wow, those are so like weird. And like, of course, they're left over from our time period. But I just still can't get over how much I love this series.
Yeah. But we are at an hour and a half, roughly.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Probably need to wrap this up.
Yep. So, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for Ilana for coming in and discussing this amazing book.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it was
had a lot of fun.
Yeah. We'll have to try and figure out what to do next, because this was a lot of fun. So.
Oh, absolutely.